This is the last section of Chapter 7, which is Trigonometric Equations. And if you haven't heard it in any of the other sections that we reviewed, is that pretty much all of Chapter 7 is on the final exam, somewhere on that test. Whether it be identifying or doing trig equations or combining the two or doing inverse functions, I know sum to product or product to sum, double angle, something is on there somewhere. So you should just start all of Chapter 7. All right, the first three things that are given you is the difference between an equation that contains a trigonometric function is called a trigonometric equation. And here are some examples. Hopefully some of this you remember from last year, so you could kind of have a grasp on what we have to do. We have to solve for the actual variable. So for part A, remember my equation. So I'm going to solve for b, so I need to move everything else but cosine b. So we're going to add 1 to the right, divide by 2. Now I'm going to take the arcsine of cosine and find out when it is a half. Well, I know that cosine is a half at 60, but since it is positive half, it is not only at 60, but it's also in quad 4, so 360 minus 60 would be 300. So the two values that would work for this equation is 60 and 300. You could check these in the calculator and you should get 0 at the end if you actually wanted to go ahead and do that. I'm going to rewrite my next equation. And this kind of looks like it's a quadratic. You know, there's a sine squared, this is a sine, and then there's a regular number. So we're going to go ahead and double bubble. I need to get 13 in there. This is both negative. 6 and 1, so outside will give me 12. Inside 1, 12 plus 1 is 13. Each bubble gets set equal to 0. So the first one, 2 sine x minus 1 equals 0. Move your 1 over, divide by 2. So sine x is a half. Well, what is sine a half? 30. But also in quad 2, which is 150 then. We move this one over, sine x equals 6. Well, sine can never equal 6, because it never could be bigger than 1. So we're just going to reject that one. And the last one, oh, there's a misprint. I don't know if it's on your notes or not, but it should say equals 0 at the end. Tan to the fourth of 9x minus 9 equals 0. Okay, so I want tan to the fourth x, or 9x, by itself. So move 9 over. Then I need to take the fourth root of it to get just tan x, or tan 9x. So this is the fourth root of 9, which is actually positive and negative cube root of 3. Because the square root of 9 is 3. If you take the fourth root of 9, it'd be cube root, square root of 3. Blah, blah, blah. Square root of 3. So we're actually going to talk about all 4 quadrants. Well, when is tan square root 3? Well, that's at 60. So if 9x equals 60, okay, then x equals 6 2/3. But we are talking about all 4 quadrants. So then we're also, that's quad 1. Quad 2 is 173 1/3. Quad 3 is 186 2/3. And then quad 4 is 353 1/3. Just take your 6 2/3 and that's like your reference angle. Find all 4 quadrants. Here we have 2 different functions. You can't solve with 2 different functions. So we have to get it so it's the same function. We have a cosine and a sine. I could change sine squared so it's cosine squared. And then I'm going to distribute my 2 in. Then it starts looking like a quadratic. So move everything over to the left. And indeed, it is a quadratic, so I'm going to double bubble. All right, so 2, 1, they are different signs. So the outside I'll get positive 4, insides I'll get negative 1, it'll give me positive 3. Set that one equal to 0. Set the other bubble equal to 0. So the first one we have cosine A is a half. I'm running into the other problem. That's okay though. One is cosine a half. Well, that's at 60. And quad 4, which is 300. And the other one, cosine A of negative 2, can never happen, so reject that one. Make sure you reject the one that doesn't exist. All right, we are not actually going to do A. Cross that out. For part B, though, we have cosine, secant, and a cosine. This seems super funky. So it would be like changing 3x to 2x plus x. I mean, it could get super funky. Or we could just move everything to one side, set it equal to 0. You notice that each term, because there's only 2 terms there, has a cosine 3x. So I'm going to factor that out. Then I can set each of those equal to 0. All right, well, one is cosine 0. Cosine is 0. Oh. At 90 and 270. So we're talking about 30 and 90, which actually is not the way that I did it above. Oh, wait. Oh, whoopsies. Yeah. These are wrong. Let me erase those. Yeah, I thought that looked kind of funny. Okay, well, if tan is 60, so we're looking at reference angles of 60, 120, 240, and then 300. And then each of these are divided by 9x. Sorry about that. So here, x is 6 2/3. 2/3. 120 divided by 9. Good question. 13 1/3. I knew it was going to change. 13 1/3. 240 divided by 9. And 300 divided by 9. Oh, one too many 3s there. So we're looking at 26 2/3 and 33 1/3. That doesn't seem right. All right, well, guess the teacher. That's what I'm going to tell you. 26 2/3. And then 30, I think it was 30. 30 1/3, 33 1/3, something like that. Yeah. Ask about that one. Ask about that one. All right, this one. Oh. I want to. There we go. Secant x equals 2. Well, secant is a flip of cosine. So I flipped this to make it cosine. I got to flip the 2, make it a half. What is cosine a half? 60. And then also in quad, 4 at 300. And then the back. So to solve the equation, we're just going to do it between 0 and 360. Instead of changing it, we'll just keep it the same. All right, there's really not, other than like you could do this in calculator, but let's do it algebraically. So we're going to square both sides. If I square cosine plus 1, it becomes that. But I can change cosine squared x to 1 minus, or sine squared x to 1 minus cosine squared x. And then move everything over. 2 cosine squared x plus 2 cosine x equals 0. Well, that doesn't double bubble, but it does have common factors. So factor out 2 cosine x. We are left with cosine x plus 1 equals 0. Set each of those equal to 0. Here cosine x is 0. Here cosine x is negative 1. Cosine is 0 at 90 and 270. And cosine is at negative 1 at 180. All right, multiple angles. Sine 2w is a double angle formula, which means we actually change it. So this, it will change to 2 sine w cosine w from the formulas from earlier. Well, we have two terms. They have a common cosine w, so factor that out. And set each of these equal to 0. Well, one is cosine 0, 90 and 270. One is sine a half, at 30 and 150. Then we have a half angle formula. So square root 3 tan of x over 2 minus 1 equals 0. So we're going to move 1 over and divide by square root 3. Which is not pretty. So we will change it so it looks like square root 3 over 3. We will rationalize it. Oh, that's a 3 on the bottom, not a 2. So when is tan square root 3 over 3? That's at 30. But that would be quad 1. And then also it would be in quad 3, because it's positive. So if x over 2 is 30, what divided by 2 is 30? Well, x then must be 60. If x over 2 is 210, then what divided by 2 gives you 210? It must be 420. Less 2. Oh, well, a is already in a quadratic form. So I'm going to go ahead and double bubble it. I feel like we just did this one. Did we just do that one? No. It was 6 and 1 to get 13 or something. All right. Well, they are both negative. Set them each equal to 0. So the first one, cosine x of a third. Second one, cosine x equals a fourth. Well, that can't exist, so cross it out. Cosine x equals a third. Well, that is not a perfect number, so we will put in the calculator. I'm going to be in degree mode just because I've been doing the rest of them in degrees. So I went arc cosine of a third. 70.5. That's quad 1. To get quad 4, subtract it from 360, and you get 289.5. And the last one, 7 cosine x plus 5 equals 0. Move 5 over and divide by 7. So it's negative 5/7. Back to our calculator, second cosine 5/7. I don't need the negative because it's just going to give me a reference angle. So this is 44.4. Okay, that's the reference. Make sure that you know that. That's the reference angle because we are talking about negative cosine. So we're talking about quads 2 and 3. So x really, you probably shouldn't write x equals there. That's the reference angle. X does equal 135.6 for quad 2 and 224.4 for quad 3. And that would wrap up chapter 7.